Chapter 1, The Cold Sylvia Johnson 1. Babe, hurry up. My husband will be back soon. In the luxurious villa, Ethan Smith stood at the bedroom door, hearing the slightly hurried voice inside. He was very familiar with this voice, as it was his own wife, Sylvia Johnson. He's just a loser. What can he do when he comes back? Even if he sees this, he'll have to put up with it. A rough male voice entered Ethan's ears. Ethan stood at the door, his whole body trembling. Anger almost made him lose his mind. With a bang, his eyes were bloodshot, and he kicked the door open with one foot. In the room, a man and a woman were half-dressed. Seeing Sylvia's appeasing posture on the bed, Ethan couldn't contain his anger, and tears involuntarily flowed out. "Sylvia, why are you treating me like this?" Ethan's eyes were filled with pain as he clenched his teeth and stared at Sylvia. A hint of panic flashed in Sylvia's eyes, but she quickly calmed down. Instead, she looked at Ethan with an indescribable coldness. "Now that you've found out, I have nothing more to say," Sylvia sneered. "Why are you treating me like this? I've been with your family for 3 years, living worse than a dog. You asked me to squat, and I never dared to stand, but why did you betray me?" Ethan almost roared, his face covered in tears. Sylvia sneered, "No woman could like a useless loser like you." She turned to look at the muscular man beside her. "Do you know who he is? Gary Brown, the Brown family's young master. To be honest, we've been secretly together for a long time. If it weren't for my grandfather not allowing us to divorce, I would have kicked you out a long time ago." A mocking look flashed in Sylvia's eyes. Hearing this, Ethan couldn't hold back his tears anymore. "For 3 years, I've been tiptoeing around, afraid of making you unhappy. When you were hungry, I got up in the middle of the night to cook for you. You said you liked the flowers in South City, and I rode my electric bike for over an hour to pick them for you. Enough," Sylvia impatiently interrupted Ethan. Obviously, these once warm moments could not touch this heartless woman. "You think being nice to me is enough? If it weren't for my grandfather insisting on me marrying you, do you think I would have looked at you? A useless loser. Can't you see what you're made of?" Sylvia sneered. "Look at Gary Brown." Sylvia pointed to the man beside her. "At such a young age, he already has assets worth nearly $100 million. This time, he's even cooperating with the Taylor family from the capital city." "The Taylor family, do you know what that means? Do you know what kind of influence the people in the capital city have? With one word, they can make us soar." Sylvia laughed coldly. "Why are you telling him about the Taylor family from the capital city? Can a loser like them know about them?" Gary Brown looked at Ethan with a mocking face. Ethan's face was full of bitter smiles. He was really clueless about business, but he had heard of the Taylor family from the capital city. The entire River City had been reporting on the matter recently, making it hard for Ethan not to know about it. Looking at Sylvia's beautiful but cold face, Ethan couldn't help but sob quietly. "I've been serving you for 3 years. Even if it were a dog, there should be some feelings." Ethan choked. Sylvia snorted, "You're not even as good as a dog." Gary Brown taunted, "Idiot, if you're sensible, pretend you didn't see anything today, and the 3 of us can still live happily together. You'd still be eligible to serve your goddess. If you don't know any better, just pack your things and get lost." Gary Brown looked down on Ethan, as if he were the real owner of the house. Ethan felt a sense of powerlessness. 3 years ago, Sylvia's superstitious grandfather Bill Johnson believed that Ethan would bring luck to the Johnson family, and invited him to become his grandson-in-law. It's been 3 years since Ethan married into the Johnson family, and during these 3 years, no one in the family, besides grandfather, had ever looked up to Ethan. This made Ethan even more inferior, so he desperately tried to please the Johnson family, fearing that he might upset them. But in the end, this was the result. I really am a useless loser. A self-mocking smile appeared on Ethan's lips. After 3 years, I should have some backbone, right? Ethan looked at the adulterous couple in front of him, a fierce determination in his eyes. What? You can't take it? Gary Brown noticed Ethan's look but was not afraid. Instead, he showed a mocking smile. Ethan stared at Gary, clenched his fists, and gritted his teeth. You beast, I'll fight you. With that, Ethan rushed towards Gary with all his might. However, Ethan, who was physically weak, was no match for Gary. His punch didn't even land on Gary before he was kicked to the ground by Gary's foot. The intense pain in his abdomen made it almost impossible for Ethan to stand up. Damn it, you piece of trash, still dare to fight me? Gary Brown burst into anger. He rushed to Ethan Smith and began punching and kicking him. This only made Ethan Smith more desperate. He lay on the cold ground, allowing the fists to fall on him. I'm living such a worthless life. Ethan Smith hugged his head, a bitter smile on his face. I can't even seek revenge. I don't deserve to live. Ethan Smith's eyes gradually became hollow. The endless punches and kicks caused Ethan Smith's mouth to bleed. Enough. Hitting such trash is simply an insult to you. Sylvia Johnson stopped Gary Brown and spoke in a delicate voice. Gary Brown spat on Ethan Smith's face and pointed at the door, saying, "Get the fuck out of here right now, or I'll beat you to death." With difficulty, Ethan Smith crawled up from the ground and walked out step by step. He hated the adulterous couple. And he hated himself for not being able to take revenge, for being worthless. Ethan Smith couldn't accept it. He couldn't just leave humiliated. Sylvia, you'll regret this. Ethan turned around and said coldly. Gary Brown pointed at Ethan Smith and cursed, "Get the fuck out already, heard me?" Ethan Smith wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and left the Johnson residence. At the door, he happened to meet his mother-in-law, Brenda Johnson, who had just returned. Brenda Johnson glanced at the Mercedes-Benz parked outside the door, seemingly understanding everything. "Mom," Ethan Smith called out, somewhat aggrieved. Brenda Johnson's gaze was as cold as ice. She waved her hand impatiently, saying, "Since you know it all, just accept it." To be honest, the entire Johnson family agrees that you should leave. This made Ethan Smith even more desperate. Is Grandpa also agreeing? Ethan Smith didn't want to give up. Brenda Johnson sneered. This time, his agreement doesn't matter. The Brown family has already established a partnership with the Taylor family of the capital city. If we can get on this big ship, our Johnson family can also benefit. When this involves the development of the entire family, do you think just him, an old man, could change anything? Brenda Johnson scoffed. As for his talk about good luck, it's clearly just superstitious nonsense. Ethan Smith didn't say anything else. The indifference of the entire Johnson family left him heartbroken and lost. He wiped his mouth and walked out of the Johnson residence. The physical pain and the emotional blow were almost too much for Ethan Smith to bear. At last, he fainted on the street. At this moment, a Maybach with a license plate from the capital city parked steadily in front of Ethan Smith. The car window slowly rolled down. A long-haired, elegant girl frowned at Ethan Smith, who was lying on the ground. "Is he the fiancé grandfather arranged for me?" The girl blinked her big eyes, carefully examining Ethan Smith. But seeing the miserable appearance of Ethan Smith, she couldn't help but feel somewhat disgusted. "Miss, are we mistaken? Didn't the old man say that he must be an extraordinary person?" A man dressed as a bodyguard in the car frowned and said. Emily Taylor didn't say anything, waved her hand, and said, "Just bring him to the car first." "Yes, miss." Several bodyguards quickly got out of the car and dragged Ethan Smith into the car. Looking at the pathetic appearance of the man in front of her, Emily Taylor's eyebrows furrowed even tighter. "Grandpa, are you really going to make me marry such a loser?" Emily Taylor couldn't help but sigh softly. In her mind, she recalled the words her grandfather had said before he left. "Emily, our Taylor family owes his family a favor." Without Ethan Smith's father, the Taylor family would never be where it is today. Ethan Smith's father left him a token, and he once told me to give it to him when he turned 30. Mr. Smith is a highly accomplished person, and I believe that his son will not be any worse. Emily, remember, always treat Ethan Smith kindly. Emily Taylor's mind was filled with her grandfather's advice, and her beautiful face showed a helpless smile. "If he really is someone with potential, I will agree to Grandpa," Emily Taylor murmured in her heart. "But if he's just a loser, I'm afraid I can't obey Grandpa's orders," Emily Taylor sighed. She fondled a piece of green jade pendant, which was the token her grandfather had asked her to give Ethan Smith. Emily Taylor carefully put the jade pendant on Ethan Smith and then turned her head. Returning the token, the Taylor family has kept its promise, Emily Taylor thought to herself. Yet, she hadn't noticed that the bloody jade pendant softly glowed and quickly melted into Ethan Smith's body as soon as it touched him.